Hello everybody and welcome back to the ASUS North America YouTube channel. This is JJ once again, and we're bringing you something you guys are always asking about, and that's going to be how to build a PC. And specifically for you guys that have been looking at the channel, you guys have known that we've been putting out tons of content around Z87 and the 4th generation series car processors. So what we're going to be doing for you guys here is going through a step-by-step process of how to build a Z87 based system, of course featuring our latest and greatest series of motherboards, and of course a number of our different components, as well as some great components to be able to round out a new high performance oriented system. So we're going to go through all the ins and outs in terms of helping you guys understand why we've made the selection for the components that we have, as well as giving you some perspective on considerations on how do you integrate those components into your system, maybe some tips and tricks, and a couple of things to go along all the way from the beginning of your build all the way to the end of the build in itself. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at what we're actually going to be targeting once we've completed our system build. Okay guys, so normally we usually give you a bit of perspective in terms of having all our components laid out, and then we go through the actual kind of system decision process in terms of why we've set out these components, why we've gone ahead and selected them, and what's our kind of target. But this time we're changing it up a little bit for you, and we'd love to hear you guys' feedback on how we've set this up. So pretty much here you can see this is the entire system that we're going to be building. So from top to bottom, we've already essentially got everything finished up. You can see this is an awesome system. It's based off of our high mid-range series motherboard, the Pro series, and of course uses a 4th generation Core Series I processor, specifically the 4770K. We've got 16 gigabytes of Kingston HyperX Beast memory in there. We've got a Kingston HyperX 120 gigabyte SSD, 2 terabyte Western Digital mechanical hard drive, and an ASUS Blu-ray combo drive, our awesome brand new GTX 670 DirectCU Mini. Of course, in the terms of the chassis, we've got this great high performance, really flexible, and really easy to work with Phoenix Ghost chassis. PSU duties, we're tapping Seasonic and their Platinum Series PSU. So this is their 860 watt fully modular Platinum Series PSU. And for cooling, we've got a number of different components in there, ranging from Noctua's ultra high performance and great quality design heatsink. This is specifically their NH low profile series. And then from there, we've got a number of additional fans that we've integrated in there from Phoenix, their Spectre Pro, specifically 5 of them. So that gives you just a little bit of perspective, and we're going to go in all the ins and outs, covering each one of these components in more detail as far as why we've selected them and why we've decided to integrate them all together. But the end goal at the end of the day here is to give you guys a perspective at what a high performance Z87 system is targeted towards. And also we want to focus a little bit more maybe on the general aesthetics. Now we've covered some other angles in regards to cooling. While with the cooling solution that we have in place, while it's a high performance solution, it's low profile. It's not necessarily targeted at extensive overclocking, but that along with a lot of other design choices we go ahead and cover through the rest of the video. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at things a bit more in detail regarding all the components that we have for our system. Okay guys, now that we've given you a little bit of perspective on what the final system looks like, we're actually going to talk about everything that we need to go ahead and actually build our Z87 based system. So keep in mind that while overall these are definitely all components that you could utilize towards actually building your Z87 based system, you can interchange these for a number of different items, whether you want to go ahead and go with a different type of cooling solution, a different type of GPU, a different type of ODD, larger capacity SSD, whatever it might be. And definitely as you guys are considering or you guys are thinking about the different types of builds, we'd love to see that type of feedback here on the page, and you can make sure to send that our way, and we can incorporate that as we continue to work on new types of content for you. So first and foremost, what we're going to do is give you a little bit of breakdown and perspective on the components that we've selected, why we've selected them, and how they kind of work together in terms of how we're coming together to put together our entire build. So first and foremost, when you're generally going about selecting a system and what you're going to be doing with that system, the most important thing is defining usually the motherboard. The motherboard, in terms of the base feature set and the functionality and the performance that's offered with that board, is going to dictate to a large degree what type of platform and what type of system you're going to be tending to go towards. Of course, if it was like mini ITX, it would define that you would be going with a different type of chassis. If it was, let's say, a full-size ATX board with multi-GPU support, also might change the PSU as well as the chassis type again. So there's a lot of variations that come with the motherboard that you select. Since we're trying to target an overall really solid performance-oriented build, we've gone with our Pro Series motherboard. So this one specifically is the Z87-PRO. So it's got a little bit of everything in terms of giving us a great baseline to have a high-performance enabled system. We've got integrated dual-band Wi-Fi with Bluetooth support. We have multi-GPU support. We have extensive connectivity in terms of additional serial ATA connections, additional USB ports. advanced fan control functionality, pretty much every single thing that we're going to need in terms of setting us up and giving us a very capable system, not only at stock, but overclock configurations, that's going to go ahead and get us. Now, once we've gone ahead and defined the board, we can go ahead and have the selection for the CPU. Now we're going to be utilizing a 4770K, so that's a K, an overclocking capable part. So that of course aligns with us picking a Z87 enabled motherboard, as Z87 supports overclocking. We'll talk about cooling in a little bit, but of course it being an overclocking capable part to a degree that will dictate the type of cooling solutions that we're going to consider. Now if you guys want to be able to save a little bit more money, you can also consider going with the 4670K, which is still an overclocking capable part, but as opposed to being an 8-thread based CPU model, it's a 4-thread CPU model, but allows you to save a little bit more while still having a very high level of performance. Now, next up, what we're going to take a look at is then the chassis. For me, the chassis really defines not only the aesthetic look, but a lot of the functionality and versatility you're going to have with the system. So we've gone ahead and tapped BitPhoenix Ghost chassis. For the money, at it being about $100, I really think this is an outstanding chassis, not only in terms of its performance, its styling, but the feature set. You talk about you have a huge amount of flexibility, such as, you know, very easy to work with fan filters. You can pop them on and off, be able to easily access them. The actual side panels themselves actually have padding, so that if you want to go ahead and be able to dampen the acoustics of your system, even though we're going to be selecting a lot of components and we're going to have technologies on our motherboard that can help to manage everything, to keep everything cool and quiet, it doesn't hurt in terms of having a setup that gives you some flexibility. So if I take this front panel chassis off, you can see right here, so this is some of the padding material, and that's also another great feature, as you see, is the flexibility at the way this chassis is defined. Not only do we have easy access to, let's say, the top, the front intake fans, we have, of course, molded cutouts on the inside, top front USB 3. We have an easy actually bay here for an additional hard drive for access. Pretty much all the performance-oriented features we would expect with the chassis, and doesn't really leave us missing too much in terms of what we're going to be looking for. And we have more than enough room in terms of internal expansion, whether it's going to be the GPUs, whether it's going to be storage devices, whatever you're going to need. So that's a great choice there. Now, next up is going to be the power supply. For the power supply, we've gone ahead and tapped Seasonic's Platinum Series PSU. This is specifically their 860 watt XP series. This is a modular-based power supply, so that gives us flexibility in how we're going to be able to route the cabling inside of the chassis. So that's great because that helps us to optimize airflow, as well as gives us flexibility to be able to route everything tightly and efficiently. And in terms of the overall power topology of the power supply, it's class-leading, super efficient, quiet under operation, but it's going to consistently provide us a high level of power delivery so that we can be confident not only when we're overclocking, if we're running stock, or if we're running multiple GPU configurations, we need everything we need. Now, if you want to save a little bit of money, you could drop down to, let's say, like their 660 watt series PSU and still be able to have an outstanding level of performance. Now, while we're only going ahead and utilizing one single GPU in our configuration, we went ahead and went with the 860 watt just to be able to account for the additional headroom should we add a second GPU, as well as we are going to overclock this system, so that will increase power consumption. If you're going to be a little bit more conservative, like I said, the 660 watt or like a 750 watt would be more than adequate, especially when you're considering a high quality performance power supply like what Seasonic brings to the table. Now, in terms of the GPUs, like we touched upon, we're going right here with the GeForce GTX 670, the direct CU, and actually the mini version. Now, some of you guys might be wondering, well, why would I use a mini version in an ATX-based system? The great thing actually about this card is that just because it's small form factor, it doesn't mean that it compromises on performance. So with the high performance vapor chamber design that we have on there, we can effectively run this card at full GTX 670 level performance. When you tie that in with the architecture that's at play in the card, the GeForce Experience software, and the outstanding GeForce driver stack, that gives us a huge amount of flexibility in terms of giving us a high level of performance in a small package, power efficient, and while giving us all the display output functionality that we need. It also doesn't hurt that when you guys take a look at when we installed the chassis, because of the smaller profile, aesthetically, I like the fact that it won't cover the PCH. So the PCH, for you guys that are wondering, is right here on the back of the motherboard. There's a picture right here of the PCH, and that's that essentially what some people refer to as the South Bridge and that heatsink. If I used a larger graphics card, like one of our either standard DirectCu 2 series cards, that PCH would be covered. Under this situation, it's not going to be covered, so aesthetically I like the look a little bit more. But of course, if you guys wanted to go with something a little bit lower or a little bit higher, you could definitely do that. We of course just launched our brand new GTX 700 series, like the GTX 770 and the GTX 780 DirectCu 2 cards. Those would make perfect options for this system as well. So next up, of course, we've got a number of other storage and memory related components. So First off here is we have memory. We've gone ahead and tapped Kingston for their outstanding and high-performance HyperX Beast memory. So the Beast is essentially kind of their performance-oriented but mid-tier memory brand. It's underneath their Predator line of memory, which even it features more advanced frequencies, more aggressive timings, and even a more advanced form of an actual heat spreader technology. But these are great modules. This is a 16 gigabyte configuration, so 4 gigs for 4 DIMMs. It gives us a total of 16, and we're running at 1866. Now, not the most aggressive frequencies. Definitely we could be selecting 2133 or 2400 speeds. But with this platform, you don't want to keep in mind that overclocking, it is a little bit more variable in terms of the CPU frequency and the memory divider being run at high dividers. So that means that to be able to help to ensure overall consistency, we're going with a little bit more moderate frequency in terms of the memory, but still we want to go ahead and have higher than stock so that we can get better performance from our system, especially since we are going to overclock it. Next up from there, of course, this is high performance system, so we need high performance storage. So we're going ahead and utilizing an SSD. So we've got Kingston's HyperX 3K series of SSDs. We're actually going to be utilizing 2 of them in a RAID 0 configuration, but it's actually about the same cost in terms of going with a single 240 gig. Actually, in most situations, my personal recommendation would be to not RAID the volumes and actually buy a larger single SSD in terms of the capacity. Your overall consistent read and write performance and overall IOPS are going to be far more consistent with a single volume as opposed to in a RAID based configuration. But with the outstanding price and the performance that the 120 gigabyte models offer, we've gone ahead and tapped those 2, and we're still going to get outstanding performance, great reliability. So we're going to go ahead and utilize 2 of these 120 gigabyte Kingston HyperX SSDs. Next up from there, of course, this is a high-performance system. We're going to be doing a lot of different things on our system, whether it's music, movies, games, whatnot. So we need a bit more storage than what a standard SSD can offer right now. And so for that, we're going to go ahead and still focus on a high-performance mechanical drive. So we've tapped Western Digital's Black Series. The Black Series is their highest performance mechanical hard drives, 7200 RPM, 64 megabytes of cache. It's an outstanding drive, reliable. It's actually pretty quiet in terms of its overall operation, and when we consider the acoustic dampening material that we have within this chassis and the way that the actual hard drives are mounted, it's really going to help to minimize any overall sound produced by the hard drive. So 2 terabytes, more than enough in terms of giving us a comfortable volume of space to be able to go ahead and put our additional content that we don't need on the outright fastest speeds for our SSDs. Now from there, we've got another item right here, which is our Blu-ray combo drive. So this is our ASUS Blu-ray combo drive. Gives us the capability of burning DVDs, burning CDs, reading DVDs, and reading BD discs. So I'm a big multimedia fan. I feel that any high-performance system should still have an optical drive, just for flexibility in terms of stalling your operating system. And it's also still, I feel, the best way at having persistent, long-term relative backups. So whether they're personal photos, videos, or even actually important things that you really want to be able to keep on your system for the long term, archive them out to media. A lot of media can actually be archived for 50, 75 years, and you don't have to worry about any type of failure or things like that as long as you pretty much put it out of direct sunlight. So I think that's still a great option as opposed to always storing on mechanical volumes, which, you know, from an external standpoint, have the likelihood that they can fail. So we're still going to go ahead and be utilizing that. It gives us great flexibility. Plus, we get to manage the ability to have still accessibility to high definition based content for Blu-ray. Now, for cooling purposes, we are going to expand upon what comes equipped with this chassis. So we're going to go ahead and be utilizing a couple of additional Spectre Pro Series fans from BitPhoenix. So we're going to go ahead and set these up in here, and that's just to go ahead and allow us to have additional airflow. The great thing, though, is because we're utilizing this Z87-PRO Series motherboard, all the headers are fully controllable. So that means every single one of these fans that we have attached to the motherboard and set up into the chassis, we can route and control through the actual motherboard, whether it's inside of the UEFI or whether it's inside our AI Suite 3 system utility. So that's going to go ahead and give us that great balance of cooling, but also being able to manage the acoustics of the system. Now, speaking on cooling, we've got a couple of different options that you can see here, and we've gone ahead and tapped Noctua. They make an outstanding range of CPU coolers that really are just almost unmatched in terms of the performance, the acoustics, the design quality, and also even the installation process, the attention that they have to the mounting hardware hardware makes it a very simple and easy process to work with, and one that we appreciate when we're building an entire system. Now, we have a couple of different choices as you can see here, and this really kind of just depends on you as the user. When you're setting up your system, you want to keep in mind, do I really want to go with an overclock, or am I more interested in keeping a more stock-oriented level of performance and keeping things cool? If that's the case, you could go with something like this, which is the NHL9i. This is still a very high performance heatsink, but it's low profile, it's compact, it's not going to obstruct anything in terms of the memory. You get a great downward firing design which helps to cool the VRM section on the motherboard. So if we go back again, once again to our picture right here, you're going to get air that's going to circulate and downward fire and cool that entire top section of the board. When we add that in with the cooling that we're incorporating into the rest of our chassis, that's going to give us some really great temperature performance. Now with this, you could still go ahead and even do some moderate level of overclocking. But if you're interested in having a more aggressive level of overclocking, so you want to shoot for maybe frequencies of 4.4 to about 4.6 gigahertz, then of course you could go with something higher performance. So that, an example, that would be the NHL12 series cooler. So this is still a downward firing based fan design as opposed to a tower based heatsink, but because it offers significantly more mass and much more flexibility in terms of being equipped with a larger diameter fan, we're going to get more airflow, but still be able to have a very quiet level of operation. So these are two different options. Now the last option would be if you guys outright are interested in the highest level of performance. So you're really aggressive, you're looking really at that minimum marker of 4.5, 4.6, 4.7 or greater, then we could go something like this, the NHU14. So this is equipped with support for 140 millimeter fans, and this is going to offer significantly higher airflow, more mass, more density in terms of the heat sink and the fin assembly to be able to dissipate the heat that we're working with. The one thing that you do want to keep in mind with a larger tower heat sink and these larger fans is that potentially you could have obstructions with the type of memory that you're selecting. So it might require, instead of utilizing this Kingston HyperX Beast memory that we're using, maybe using Kingston's Genesis memory, which is low profile, so that you could still go ahead in a large tower heat sink like this, but still fully equipped 4 DIMMs. So keep in mind that the cooling solution that you utilize will affect some of the clearance considerations that you have on the inside of the chassis. And we'll show you a bit more when we actually go through that installation process. So with that pretty much rounds out the majority of the components that we've gone ahead and tapped, gives you a little bit of insight in terms of why we've selected these components and what you're going to be able to get out of them.